Cool. So welcome to the podcast, Lana. It's great to have you on.
Thanks for having me, Rob. It's great to be here.
And congratulations on your 40th cap yesterday.
Yeah, thanks very much. It was awesome.
So tell us, for those who haven't come across you and obviously haven't seen you play, how did you first get involved in sport more generally? And then what were your opportunities like as a youngster growing up in Hawick?
Well, I was always an active kid. Like, I was never one to sit in front of a computer screen or anything like that. And I was always outdoors, like playing in the mud and stuff when I was tiny. And then as I went through school, I was always interested in PE and stuff. So I was always very active, went to any after school club that I could. And then when I went to high school, I kind of went down the sort of hockey, football, rugby route. So it pretty much took over my life after school for S1 to S3. And then I kind of had to lose one of them because it was just too much as rugby got more things in the week, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. So yeah, then I decided to kind of stop playing hockey, and then I was left with football and rugby. And football was just something to kind of relax at, whereas rugby I was starting to take more seriously. Like, I was involved in regional things, and I played for Scotland under-16s when I was only in first year, but I think I was 11 when I got 11 years old when I got the letter through, and then I was 12 when I played. I think we played against Northumbria or something. So that was pretty cool. And then when I went into fifth year, I decided to lose football as well. And then I just focused on rugby. It was difficult because there wasn't a rugby team at the high school, and there wasn't one in Hawick. So I had to travel across to Gala Shields to play for their under-15s and then their under-18s team. But probably the most difficult point was in that first and second year of school, despite the fact I was in the Scotland under-16 setup, I didn't have any rugby down here at all. I just had the Scotland sessions and the regional sessions, like with the South, but they were very rare. So it was a difficult time, and I'm not saying that I would ever have thought I was going to give up, because rugby is just in my blood. It's just how I am. But I think if I was somebody that wasn't as driven, I think I would have probably given up at that point. But then I was lucky enough they set up a team in Gala, and then luckily I've got really supportive parents, so they drove me across every Monday and every Sunday to wherever I was going. So yeah, that's kind of where it started off up until the end of school. But yeah.
So you did what everyone in Hawick hates to do and got out of Hawick and drove to Gala.
I know, that's a bit controversial. And then I made the even worse mistake after that. Then I went to Melrose. I mean,
yeah, true.
Oh, as a Hawick person, there's nothing worse, really.
I'm surprised they let you back in.
No, I know. It's funny. But yeah, so after playing for Gala Girls, when I was like 16, I got approached by the coach at Melrose at that point, and he was like, "Oh, do you want to come across and train?" Obviously, you couldn't play until you were 17, but I went across and trained a bit leading up to my 17th birthday, and then I got involved with that. So it was kind of just juggling the two, playing a bit under-18s rugby, playing a bit women's rugby, kind of just getting used to it, meeting new people, being coached by different people. And during that time, then I got moved on to the Scotland under-18s and then the Scotland under-20s. And then when I was 17, got called up to my first Scotland women camp, and then got capped in November 2012 against Netherlands. And that was my first cap. And then I had a sort of 2-year, it's not a blip as such, but just didn't really know where I was going with like what position I wanted to play. I was a back row at that point. I was playing 6. And I have always had pretty good skill set, but maybe not the fitness side of it. Certainly not at that point. So I kind of had a couple of years where I was just kind of trying to figure out what I was doing, and the coaches were also kind of trying to figure out, because they knew I had the skills to be in the team, but they just couldn't figure out where. So after a couple of seasons of, it was pretty tough, like just not getting picked for anything, but training all the time, I decided to take a year away from it, just to enjoy playing club rugby, and just because at that point I was pretty like down about rugby. I was just constantly like not making the team, not making the selection, not even getting into the 25-man squad for a Six Nations game. And I was like, couldn't really understand why. So I took a bit of time away from it, and then I was approached by the coach and asked if I'd come back in a slightly different position. So I came back as a hooker, having not played it since under 15s rugby, when it is very different playing an international than it is under 15s. But yeah, so that's kind of what happened. And then as I came back in, I was on the bench for 2 games, and then I started everyone since, apart from one game against Wales a couple of years ago when I came back for injury. I was on the bench, but every other game I've started since. And I think that was a crucial point for me, was moving from back row to hooker, realising that I was going to be an athletic front row rather than a slow back row, if you know what I mean.
So what age were you when you made that transition from back row to hooker? I
would have been 19, I think, 19 or 20. So yeah, it was a big point in my career. That was a big decision, and it was a gamble because I had never played it before and I hadn't thrown the ball in or anything. Like, I didn't know really what I was doing, but I learned quickly and I learned on the spot. And I mean, it's been the best decision I've ever made.
So that transition, obviously, it's a very different skill set, a very different position, both in terms of not just in open play, but in close play as well, in terms of your role in lineouts and your role at scrum time, etc. So what was that learning curve like, going from being a back row to being a hooker? What, in terms of your time invested, how much more of your own personal time did you have to go away and work on those individual skills that are needed as a hooker?
Well, I had to go from being this really quiet person who didn't say a word to anybody to suddenly I had to lead a pack of people. Like, being the hooker at the front of the scrum, you're always kind of in charge, regardless of, if you may have a pack leader who's not a front rower, but ultimately we're at the front, so we're in charge, and the hooker makes all the calls. So suddenly I was like, wow, I'm really going to have to step up here. So I think that was probably the steepest learning curve, was the leadership side of it, rather than the physical attributes. I quickly changed, and because I had a decent skill set, learning to throw and learning to scrummage, it kind of came secondhand. Like, it was quite natural. Like, I can't really remember being terrible at it, if you know what I mean. I wasn't great, and I had to work really hard. I did have a throwing coach. Well, I've had several throwing coaches, but one of the people that really helped me out a lot was Phil Leck. He took me under his wing, and because he was coaching at Hoyk at the time, and the difference he made in my throwing was massive. So he just went like from the basics up, and then the difference in a season was crazy. So from there, I've kind of just got my own little process, and I've had various throwing coaches along the way. But I think that was the biggest turning point, was when I met Phil. And I'm really lucky because I've stayed in touch with Phil now, and he's just like an uncle to me now. Like, we're just friends now, and it's great. And that's the kind of coaching relationships I like. I like to feel relaxed, don't want to feel under pressure. And he definitely didn't make me feel that way. And it was really good because he, even yesterday, before the game, he texts me and he gives me his words of wisdom before I go on the pitch. You know what I mean? Like, and it's just people like that have made the biggest difference. So yeah, like, positionally wise, I'd say I had to get specialist help with the throwing side of things to get a process, because I had no idea. Like, I literally was just chucking it. I didn't know what I was doing. So yeah, that side of things. But to be honest, with the scrummaging, I think it just came naturally. I can't really remember learning that. I think I just got stuck in and just went for it. And because of the body shape I've got, like that, I'm quite short and I'm relatively strong. I got away with it in the early days, whereas now I'm totally different now from back then. But I think initially, I just kind of winged it. Not gonna lie, I just kind of got on with it. It's so good.
Thinking back to when you were much younger growing up, who are your sporting role models? Was it male and female? Did you have any particular female role models, or were it more just the opportunities you found yourself and the players you were around? Who were your role models growing up?
That's a difficult question, because obviously I watched rugby like all the time. So there's always players that I was like, whoa, they're so good and they're awesome. Like, for me, one of the best hookers in the world is Rory Best. He was just so good at what he did. And I wanted to be like him once I realised that's the position I wanted to be in. But before that, I was just inspired by people that I was training with. Like, so for me, one of the most inspirational people was Donna Kennedy, because of her achievements and how much commitment she gave to the game. And I was really lucky that she then became a mentor to me. She still is to this day. I could contact her at any point and she would openly help me. I know she would. So like from like the mentoring side, Donna Kennedy was definitely a big figure in that in my younger days. And I've learned a lot from her, and not just around off the pitch stuff, like on the pitch as well, but like the combination of both. Like she's just honestly so good, and like she's been awesome. But like on the pitch, it's different, because when I think back to like 3 or 4 seasons ago, I was a totally different person, and I really looked up to she's a good friend of mine now, but Lindsay Smith. She really helped me out when I was younger. I had no confidence whatsoever. I didn't know what I was doing. I was so nervous, but she was a massive support network when I was younger. So yeah, we're still friends to this day. And even though we played the same position for a while, it didn't matter. Like it didn't affect us. We were a team, and that's how it was. But if you were to ask me that now, it's totally different, because like one name just comes straight to my head: Rachel Markham, the captain of our team. She is so inspirational. The way she speaks and like the way she plays, she's just always on the ball. Do you know what I mean? Like she's always at the top of her game, and I look up to her so much. Even though I've played the game longer than she has, it doesn't matter. Like the way she leads the team is just awesome, and she also happens to be a very good friend, and I can go to her about anything at all, anything in life. She's got my back, and I think they're the kind of people that, like your Emma Wassels, your Sarah Bonners, Sarah Law, like all these names, Lisa Thompson, Chloe Rowley, all these people that I can go to for different things. Hannah Smith, even though she likes to rip into me every training session. You need the kind of people to keep you on your toes. Otherwise, you'd end up soft. But yeah, all these kind of people, we've got such a tight-knit squad at the minute. There's so many people I could name that I'm inspired by and who are a massive support to me. Do you know what I mean? Like these are just people that my head's full of names, because there's so many people that are there to help you right now, and they've got your back, and that's such a nice feeling to have.
So you've obviously mentioned already, like Phil Leck, your first throwing coach. Are there any other coaches that stand out as being influential in your direction, and any particular reason why? It might have been technical, or it might have been something completely, interpersonal skills, or things that stand out as being someone who kind of, I guess, influenced you.
I'm laughing because I'm smiling, because you can who's coming next, I think, if you think about it. Like S&C is someone I've always really struggled with. I've always been bigger. I've always been overweight. I've never been that strong. I've hated fitness, and I've never been in great shape until 3 years ago when I met Mark Robertson. And I sat with him, I remember in the academy building, I sat at the kitchen table with him, and I was just like talking so fast because I was so nervous. I had this big list of things that I wanted to let him know that I was not going to let him down. Like I just came through a sort of rough patch where I was maybe not the greatest, and I was like telling him all these things, spilling my heart to this guy who I'd only just met, and he just sat there and he was just like so nice about it, and I was like, I'm going to like this guy. Yeah, so obviously like Mark's had a big influence on me, and he still does now. And to be honest, when he moved to France, I was like, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get over this, because he was just so good at his job. But then I was like, it's all right because I've still got Rob, so it's fine. Do you know what I mean? And then you went away, and I was like, oh great, Rob, you're gone too now, but you're not really, you're still here, so it's all good. But yeah, like the combination, to be fair, of Mark and you in that academy system was honestly the best S&C combination I've ever had. And it wasn't just the content on which you gave me was class. Like it was outstanding. It's got me in the best shape, and I still use it now. But it was just that player coach connection. Like honestly, like I could speak to you about anything. I could speak to Mark about anything, literally anything, not even related to rugby. But I remember like when I had the issues with my menstrual cycle. Normally, a female talking to a male is like, no, not doing that. But I literally came to you straight away because I was like, I need your help, and it's starting to affect me. But yeah, he's obviously one of the biggest influencers on my playing career at this current moment in time. Like he's done a lot for me, and so have you equally. Like the pair of you together, like I say, was the dream team. And people are sick of me talking about you, Pierre, to be honest, but I don't care. I'll talk about you till I'm blue in the face. I'm no bother. But in terms of S&C, definitely you guys. And I'm not just saying that because it's your podcast. I mean it. Like, I wouldn't say something I didn't mean. I'm trying to think of rugby, like, because rugby is such a difficult one to, like, there's been so many people have done different things for me. Like, for instance, way back at the start of my career, Karen Finlay gave me the opportunity to be in the Scotland squad. So in a way, like, she was important to start my career off. And then obviously when I came back, it was Jules Marciano. She was the one that came to me, her and Derek O'Riordan. They said, you know what, I actually think you'd be good at hooker. Like, I think you could be world class there. So in terms of like the positional change, like, they made that decision for me pretty much. And then Shade Monroe, what a guy. I tell you, what a guy. He came, I can remember it, he came into our first session and I can't even remember how many drop balls there was. It was ridiculous. And then his last training session, like, they compared the videos before he left and it was just insane. And he installed so much confidence in me as a player. Like, because he was coaching when I was going through like a little bit of a rough patch, but he still believed in me because he knew what I wanted deep down. And I think I'll always be grateful to him for that. So yeah, like, obviously he had his own little influence around that sort of rough patch. And then if you look sort of more recently, like, Scott Forrest gave me the opportunity around the sevens. Like, that's made me a way better player. Like, I'm so much fitter and my skills are like even better than they were. And then I'm just thinking now, like, obviously you've got Ross Miller, like a guy that I've been coached by for 4 years now, in and out. But now he's the forwards coach of the national team, and it's like me and him have got such a great player-coach relationship, and I didn't even realise it was that good until like the last couple of months. It's awesome. It's like people like him that you don't really maybe think about week in, week out, but he does have a big influence on what I do. But yeah, and then obviously you've got Goose last year. He brought a totally different spin on things as well. But to be honest with you, right now, the guys that we've got coaching the national team, they're having the biggest impact on me right at this minute. Yeah, they're just, each one of them brings a different thing. Like I was saying, Tyrone, he brings that like passion and that aggression, and he's defence coach, so me and him are always going to get on great because I love defence. Like I was saying, me and Ross get on great, and then like Brian, like, he's just a totally different character from the rest. And do you know what I like with Brian is what you see is what you get. Like, he's very honest and very open. He wouldn't be shy about telling you the truth, put it that way. He will tell you it straight to you. So yeah, now, like, to be honest, there's so many people, but I think the biggest influencers have been Phil, Mark, and you. If I was to think about where I've gotten to now, where I'm at now in my career, you three guys are definitely the people that have steered that ship. And there's obviously people in the background that are like not necessarily performance related people. They've had a big influence as well. Like Chris Dewsnap, for instance, as you know, he's been a massive part of my career, not necessarily from the coaching side, but from the management and the support side. So it's like the combination of all you guys together is just what makes my life so much easier. And I've got so many people I can go to for so many different things. It's great.
So obviously a bit of a feature of, I guess, the kind of rugby setup is that it's very like heavily male dominated in terms of the coaching side of things. To you, it'd be interesting to get your opinion in terms of, is there a major difference for you being coached by a female coach versus a male coach, or do you not care? You just want the expertise? What's your kind of perspective on that?
To be honest with you, I've never really noticed because I've not been coached by that many females. So I think, like, for me, it's like getting the best people in for the job. So one of the guys that came in a couple of years ago was Ali Dickinson. And he was awesome. And I was just like, this guy's great. And in my head, I was like, why is it that we've got a male? Do you know what I mean? Like, in my head, sometimes I'm like, why is it we've got male coaches all the time? But I'm like, actually, these guys are so invested in what we're doing. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. It could be a female coach and a men's team. That doesn't matter either. To me, it's whoever is there to do the best job and who's got the best professions to do it. In my opinion, I really couldn't care. Because, like I was saying, like, it reflects in the coaching. Like, Ali Dickens was just so good. Like another guy, when I'm just thinking about it there, another guy that was just installed so much belief in me a couple of years ago, and that carries on through to now. And I think like what you're saying is basically it doesn't matter if it's male or female. It doesn't bother me at all. Like I couldn't care. Like whoever's going to give me the best that's what I want.
And how does that translate? So obviously a lot of your like the training environments that you've had. So, if we go back to one of, the old models of the academy, etc., on a day-to-day basis, you were training around, the likes of a lot of the under 20s, under 20 players, under 18s players, etc. So there was a lot of, maybe you one or two other female players training with a bigger group of male players. What were the pros and cons of that for you as a player?
Well, it's funny you said that because I can remember way back at the start, and we used to have to do that Monday night skills session. I used to hate it because I was the only female that turned up every week. Like, and the other couple that were there, you were never really sure if they were going to turn up or not. And I was like, oh, I'm surrounded by all these boys who do not want to give me the ball. But then suddenly they gave me it, and then they realised that I wasn't actually as terrible as they thought I was going to be. And then suddenly I started making friends with some of these guys, like Frosty, for instance, just as an example. Like me and him get on like house on fire. And it's like, it was just breaking through that barrier of like, oh, she's a girl. Actually, it doesn't matter. Like, it really doesn't. And I think, especially in the little core group that we had, by the end, like, they didn't even notice that I was there, if you know what I mean. Like, I wasn't sticking out like a sore thumb type thing. And like I say, I've made a couple of good friends, like Mac, Frosty, Darge, like all them. They all messaged me yesterday, actually, to say, like, congrats on your 40th cap. And it was just so nice. Like, I was like, these are good guys. Like, they have matured a lot, don't get me wrong. In the last 2 years, they have matured a lot. But yeah, no, they're good guys. And I think towards the end, obviously, because of the pandemic and stuff, I was starting to feel part of it. Like, I wasn't isolated from them. And I could ask them to do things like, can you catch some balls for me? Can you hold a shield or whatever? Like, it didn't really matter. Like, they would just do it. So yeah, like initially it was kind of nerve-wracking and it was a bit isolating, but towards the end I honestly just felt part of it, and it was actually quite a nice feeling.
Seems like a bit of a theme, like, right from where we started around that, there being limited opportunities, and if you want to get better, you have to do what's required. So for you, that meant traveling to Gala, or that meant training with the boys, or that meant, trying to get the best coaches you could, whether they're male or female. That just, to me, that sounds like the attributes of someone who just wants to get better, regardless of the circumstances. They want to figure out a way. Do you think that's a fair statement?
Yeah, I think like nothing's ever easy in elite sport, is it really? You've got to kind of make your own path, and you've got to do things that you didn't necessarily want to do. You've got to get up at 5 a.m. and do things you don't want to do, and you've got to have late nights, you've got to eat in your car, you've got to do all these things. But then for me, yesterday, playing that game, drawing with France, getting my 40th cap, it's all worth it. I didn't even think about it. I wouldn't even go back and change anything. I'd do it all again and do more if I could.
So thinking back to those, let's dig into those 5 a.m. starts. So, obviously what people maybe don't see on the pitch is, there's been a period of time where, maybe female players weren't supported financially as much as they are now, and still could be more. So, likes of yourselves working full-time jobs, and you in particular had a job that really wasn't conducive to being a high performance athlete, was it?
No, I know. Back in the day when I worked in the mill in Hoyk, yeah, that was rough. Because I'd have to get up at like 4:45 to start at 6 to finish at 3, so I could be finished earlier to then make it to the gym in time at night. But I was going straight from work to the gym. I wasn't getting a gap in the middle. And then I was really lucky actually, because the people I worked for, they were really good, and they tried to juggle my hours about a bit. But it's not as easy working in a mill or a factory, because it's a production line at the end of the day. You can't just pick and choose. So yeah, that was not the best for recovery and things like that. So I didn't really. That was one of the points of, you've got to do what you need to do in order to play. Like, I was lucky because, like I say, the people that I worked for were really nice, and they supported all my time off and stuff. But it didn't make it any easier getting up 4:30 or 5 to go to work, and then finishing at 3, and then you're in the gym at 4, and then you're trying to do rugby, but you're like literally chasing your tail constantly.
And
yeah.
as you say, there's a bit of sympathy in people's, understanding that you might be fatigued or you might be tired, but at the end of the day, once training starts, you're still expected to do your job, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. And I think one of the hardest bits for me was like when I eventually started playing the Six Nations and stuff, coming out of a camp and then going into work and then going into a camp, it was just like constant, like you didn't get a break. And I'm very aware that that's the same for people, some of the players in the team now, like they still go through that, but I'm very fortunate to not have to do that anymore. But yeah, I think that was probably one of the toughest times in order of commitment levels. Like I was always very committed, but it was really testing at points.
And that's often what people, when people tune in and watch the Six Nations or watch, World Cup qualifier, whatever, when they're watching the female games, certainly with the Scotland team, they don't understand that there's a lot of other things going in the background that maybe aren't the same. Everyone has their own stresses, don't they? No one's life is stress-free. So, if you're watching Hoggy and Finn, they still have stresses. But being able to dedicate things full-time to training is a completely different ballgame, isn't it? So when you went from working in that mill to being able to dedicate more time and the impact that had on recovery and sleep and all that, what was that transition like from being on the shop floor in the mill to transitioning into more studying, etc.?
Yeah, it was certainly different. I remember when I first got my first contract, and I can remember I phoned up Mark and I was like, so what do we do now? What do I do with my time? Because I'm like, got all this time. So yeah, I signed up to do a university course on the Open University because I was like, I've got all this time and it's very flexible. Like you can just kind of go at your own pace, and as long as you get things done by certain deadlines, it's fine. But the difference that made to me in general, actually, like I wasn't as tired all the time. Like you're saying, I was able to recover. Like, you know what I'm like, I love cooking. So I had loads of time to dedicate to actually having really good nutrition and stuff. And that's something I worked really closely with you and Mark, was getting that right. Because I didn't realise how wrong I was getting it until we had that period of time. I don't know if you can remember, it was before Christmas. It was like sort of like a 3-month chunk. We really focused in on getting that sorted. And now like I know, like I've got the knowledge and stuff, like I've got it pinned down now, but it was just having the time to do these things and like having the time to actually be at sessions, not be having to rush off after or rush to get there. Like the stress levels definitely went down a lot once I got that first contract. And because I was living in the academy, obviously it was good. It was like I was a professional anyway, because I was like there all the time. So having access to the physio stuff and that, it was great. But yeah, it was a lot more challenging than people realise, because suddenly you have all this free time and you're like, what am I going to do with it? But yeah, I think I made really good use of the free time I had, analysing different areas of my performance. And then the difference in a year, I've got pictures, I'm sure you've seen them. The difference in a year was just crazy. Like, and I swear that's because I had so much more time to recover and prepare better for training nutritionally and like sleep and all the different parts to it.
And it's a funny one because, just recently I think I was involved in a thread or on Facebook or Twitter or something like that. And it was essentially an amateur rugby player kind of asking, what things should I be doing? And they were basically trying to take on the schedule of professional rugby player. And I was kind of saying, look, your expectations are out of whack here. You can't dedicate the time and the resources that a professional player can, because he doesn't have to think about going to work. He doesn't have to think about, his commute to and from a factory or being on the shop floor for 8 or 10 hours or, a 5 a.m. start. So a lot of players kind of think they can copy and paste the schedule of a full-time player onto an amateur player, and you just can't do that, as you said. But once that schedule changes, and all those little changes add up to give you more sleep and more recovery and allow you more time to focus on your nutrition than having to grab a sandwich in your lunch break, they all add up to a bigger sum, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. And I think like even now, like I'm still doing the uni and I'm still contracted, like it was awesome. But I still find myself making little tweaks here and there because I'm still trying to get used to it. It's almost like I can't even believe it's actually happening. And this is like obviously this will be my 3rd year now. And I'm just enjoying everything that I can. Because you literally, like we were saying yesterday, like a group of us were saying, you literally don't know when your last game could be. So you're always kind of preparing for what's coming next, but equally living in this moment and being present here so that you can enjoy everything you've got. Like I really enjoy what I do in my life right now. It's really exciting and it's so much fun. Yeah, there is stress at times. Like, for example, waiting on the team sheet coming out, there's always that stress of, have I done enough? But in the back of my mind, I'm like, I'm doing everything I can, so it's all I can do. But yeah, like I just feel so much more content with life at the minute, just because I'm able to enjoy what I'm doing. Like I'm doing what I want to do. And yeah, studying is hard because I'm not the most academic human in the world, but like I get there. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm learning. But yeah, it's still, even now I still find myself thinking, am I doing this right? Do you know what I mean?
So it's interesting you touched on that already. Like as an athlete matures, you kind of go from being, well, you should go from being told what to do because you haven't really got a clue, to starting to figure out what works for you. And, you've talked about your process for throwing and you understand nutrition a lot better. So what have you started to learn about yourself as an athlete in terms of what works for you, what helps with your process, all those kind of things?
There's probably one word that sums me up very well, Rob, and that is routine. I love routine. It makes me so happy and so content because I can plan for everything. But like, don't get me wrong, like if my routine gets messed up, I'm still all right. But like, you get the best out of me when I've got my routine sorted and I know what's coming and I can like plan and prepare like everything. But yeah, I think that's probably the biggest change for me, is that I've got a really solid routine. And it matches up well with camp because it's just like being in camp. Do you know what I mean? All the difference is someone gives me a bit of paper and tells me where I've got to be when, but I'm still going through the same routine of, like, literally I eat the same breakfast every day when I'm in camp because I know that that works for me. And then like at lunch, it's the same levels of like protein, carbs, and veg because I know what I need. So yeah, it's just like little mini routines within routines, if you know what I mean. Like that's what I do. I love being organized. As soon, like, if someone asks me to be somewhere for 7 o'clock, I'm there for 6:30 because I'm too scared I'm going to be late. Like, I'd rather sit in the car for half an hour, have another snack and a wee drink before I go in than be late. I can't cope being late either. That's one thing that really stresses me out.
Is that flashbacks to dice rolls and have to walk around the pitch in silence that does
Oh,
that too?
probably, more than likely. But I was never late anyway.
No, it was never you, to be fair. It's a few names we won't mention, repeat offenders.
Well,
So how important do you think that is? Is that when you look around the squad and you look around the girls that have been there for a while and, are the names that are first on the team sheet, how is that a similar theme of that routine, in that, people having nailed down their personal routines and their routines within routines? Is that when you look around, do you see that being true of others as well?
I think it kind of comes down to your personality. I mean, there is some people that are a lot more relaxed around, like, just for an example, Emma Wassell will turn up to every meeting 1 minute before it starts because that is just what she's like. She also is like, she's funny. She's such a character, but she's organized, but she's not, if you know what I mean. Like, she is very, like, she's very professional in what she does, and when she's on the pitch, she is on it and she is got everything nailed down. But if, like, her hotel room is an absolute mess and she literally just turns up to training right on time, like I couldn't do that. That would cause me so much stress. I remember one time I was a roomie, I can't remember who we were playing against, and I was like, "Was, come on, we need to go," like, and she's like, "Oh, it's fine, we've got 10 minutes," and I'm like, "Aye, it takes like 7 minutes to get to the meeting room," and she's like, "Oh, it's fine, we'll leave in a couple of minutes," and I'm like, "Right, I'm going, you're coming yourself, see you later." Like, some people are a bit more relaxed, but there is a lot of people on the team that are the same as me and are always early for things and are always very organized. I think deep down, people like Waz are organized. They're just a little bit more relaxed and not as uptight about it as somebody like me.
I think that's something that's, and that's something that both I've learned as a coach, and I think players have learned as well, is how much of a platform that routine and organization sets for you to go about and do your work. People look and they see, obviously, the 80 minutes on a Saturday, but they don't see the routines of, your individual warm-up or your individual breakfast, like you're saying, or, all the things that have allowed you to kind of put the platform in place to go out and perform well. We don't see those things because they're invisible, but that's certainly an important part of the performance, isn't it?
Yeah, for me, if I don't have certain things in the lead up to a game, I don't feel okay about the game. But also equally in like day-to-day life, if I don't have my breakfast, my lunch, my dinner and a snack in the day at some point, I don't feel good about myself. And it's like, it sounds silly, but I can relax and have treats and stuff. Like, I just make sure they're within the meals that I'm having. Like, it's just little things like that. Like, I honestly could not cope if I didn't have a routine. Like, that's the one thing that if anyone was to ask her, like, she's so organized, she's like the first ready for training, she's the first at meetings, she's first everywhere because she can't cope being late. So yeah, I think that's one of the things that I've kind of, I think as I've got older, I've got worse actually.
It's funny you saying that now, because I think I know what the one thing you would absolutely dread is a last minute bronco that you haven't been told about from memory.
Hell, I mean, that's probably is the worst thing that would stress me. I like to mentally prepare for these things and then walk into training and Rob's like, yeah, we're going to do a bronco this morning. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. And then I run like 8 minutes or something because I can't like get my head around it. But actually, you could ask me to run it the next day and I'd run like a PB time. Though it's much faster than that, but it is a bit faster than 8 minutes.
Yeah, it's funny. That comes back to that coach-athlete relationship. I remember, obviously in high performance sport, things change overnight, don't they? Like people get injured, trainings get changed, etc., and so forth. And I remember that being one of the things that, getting to know you as a player, absolutely what you just said there around routine. We knew that, okay, if something's going to happen, we want to tell you as far in advance so that you could get yourself settled. And whereas other players, would be able to roll with things, just because, like you said, that's their personality style. So I think a lot of coaching comes down to understanding your players and what players like and dislike, and how you can navigate certain situations with certain players.
No, I totally agree. I think it's funny because if you were to ask any coach that coaches me at the minute, they would know that about me. They would know because I just like to know things. So like, see when you're waiting on a team selection and it comes out like you don't know when it's coming. I'm like, go on, someone just tell me. I got myself in some state last week, I tell you. Oh, just get so nervous, not knowing what's happening. Just someone tell me what's happening and I'm fine. But yeah, routine and knowing what's happening is one of my, I don't know if that's a weakness or not. It's a strength in some ways, but sometimes it's a weakness because like you're saying, things do change. And if you look back at our season that we've had, it was a lot of change last minute just with the global pandemic that was happening. Mm-hmm. But I actually coped no bad with it. Like I was actually all right. We had a few tears here and there, but I was actually not too bad. But yeah, I think it's a strength, but it can also be a weakness at times,
Mm-hmm. So how has your perception of yourself as an athlete changed over the years? So when you think back to that, that young Lana that was first, getting her first cap to now 40 caps in, has your perception of yourself as an athlete changed over the years, and what you see as your strengths and weaknesses? And
I'm just laughing because I'm like thinking back to my first cap and literally I don't even know if I spoke to anybody on that day. Do you know that? Don't know if I said anything on the pitch at all. I was so shy and so timid. Like that's probably the word for it. And I just had zero confidence. I just did not have any belief in myself whatsoever. Like I was just so shy. And to be honest with you, that stuck with me for a very long time. And I'm still like that now. Like I believe that I'm like good enough to be there now, but I lack confidence, not necessarily on the pitch. It's off the pitch. I really struggle with, I don't know, like I'm just really quiet and I just kind of get on with things. And do you know how sometimes you feel like you're pushing yourself out of a group a little bit, but I'm actually not. Like I'm not. Like I'm very much in the middle of the group. But I think that's one of the things that's changed about me on the pitch though, because I'm a leader now and I currently mentor a couple of players just who are kind of starting out in their career internationally. I've just opened up and says, look, if you need any advice, like I'm currently working with a player around goal setting, someone that didn't really use it. And when she first sent me her first goals, I was like, what are these? To be honest. And I said this to her, I was like, how are you supposed to use these? They're not relative to anything. So yeah, I think that's one of the biggest changes. I think, again, that comes with age, is the like sort of mentoring people. And I'd openly say I'm one of the pack leaders at the minute, just because of the experience that I've got. And I do think people respect me and I do think people look up to me for certain things. I am not the loudest. I will never be the loudest because that's just not who I am. But when I speak, people listen. And I think that's really important, that there is people that can talk a lot around like on the pitch and stuff. I'm not really going to say much. I say it when it needs said. But yeah, that's one of the things that I've definitely changed, is that I do believe in myself a lot more now than I used to. I've still got a little way to go. Like I still think I could be even better. But I think I get confidence from, it sounds daft, but I get confidence from the honesty of coaches. I would much rather someone say to me, that's not good enough, than someone be like, oh no, you're doing great, but actually they're going away and saying to the other coach, she's not on form at all. I'd much rather someone was just up front with me because then I can change it or I can improve or whatever. But I've got some real honest coaches, and like I was saying, like people like Mark and Phil and you who I can go to that will give me that honesty, and they're not necessarily coaching me directly, but they're like a support network. And I think I've got really good people around me now, whereas previously I've not had it in as much abundance. And I think the players as well at the minute, like I was saying, like your Rachel Malcolms and stuff, these are really good people. Like they're really good rugby players, but they're really good people and they bring the best out in people. And I'd like to be somebody that does that. I'm not quite there yet, but I'm learning from them and being a mentor and doing this goal setting thing. It's kind of opened my eyes up a little bit that I need to be more open to this because I'm one of the most experienced in the team. So there's a group of like 6 of us that are around sort of 40, 50 caps. I think we need to lead everybody else on and get them to where we're at. And that's just an experience thing, but passing on any knowledge that we've got. And yeah, I think that's the biggest difference I've made, is that I'm now becoming a leader and I'm now becoming someone that people can come to if they're not okay with going to the coach, if you know what I mean. Which I think that's a good thing to have.
So what are the next few months hold for you rugby wise?
Well, obviously we're playing Wales this week. And then we've got a week off, which is going to be great because we've just had a big training block and 2 big games. And then we'll start preparing for the World Cup qualifiers in December, which is a big deal for us at the minute. We're just doing the best we can to prepare for them. It's quite a big deal for me, to be honest, because obviously I'm getting on a bit and there's not going to be that many World Cups for me left. So yeah, we are looking in a good shape for it. We're training hard and we'll see what it brings in December. But yeah, that's kind of us up until Christmas. We're pretty much flat out until Christmas, which is, it's awesome. I love it, but it's busy, really busy, but it's good.
And what about beyond rugby? So what are your ambitions for life after rugby and sort of dual career, or do you have any plans on what you're going to do when this all comes to an end?
See, at the minute, like I'd be saying I want to do something totally different away from rugby. Like I just think I'm going to find it so hard to retire. I'm going to find it, because it's literally been my life since I was like 4 or 5. It's always been there. So then to not play is going to be difficult if I was then to go into like a coaching job or like S&C or something. But as you're aware, like S&C nutrition is something I'm really interested in. So I mean, there is potential to go down the S&C nutrition route, but I also want to do something really like different, you know, like I don't know whether to go back to college and then like I always wanted to be a chef, always, but I've never been able to do it because that cannot be balanced with rugby. It's just too hard. So I think maybe like going back to something like that, or I don't know, like a dog walker or something. Do you know what I mean? Something totally random. Like it's really difficult to say. Obviously, I'm doing this course on the Open University, which is great because it gives me a qualification for when I finish playing rugby, and I'll also have all this experience from playing, and I've got like a few things on my CV as well. So yeah, I don't really know where I'm going to go. It's kind of like it's approaching fast but slowly at the same time, if you know what I mean. Like I'm 27, so I'm like towards the end of my career, but I could still play for another 10 years. Mm-hmm. The world could look completely different in 10 years time. Do you know what I mean? But I think I would go for, initially, I think possibly either going back to college to study in, like I say, like a chef or something like that, or potentially either like sort of dog walk or something really active. But then I've also thought about being like an ambulance technician. So I'm like, there's so many options that go through my head. But I think they're like the sort of 3, like chef, dog walker, or an ambulance technician. They're all totally different. But I just think I'm going to need something different to fill my time. Because literally all my time is spent with rugby people, doing things for rugby at the minute, which I love. I wouldn't change it. But when it goes, I'm like, what am I going to do?
Yeah, that's one of the things that people often, and athletes, you know, particularly experience it's a very big and very sudden transition, isn't it? To wake up suddenly one day and no longer be a rugby player, not be in and around the team with your mates or in that setting, you know, that, like you say, that routine. You know, for a lot of guys and girls, that's a big change overnight to go from being a professional rugby player, an international rugby player, to, okay, what do I do with myself? Do you think that's something that people are prepared adequately for? Or do you think that's something that coaches and support staff could do a better job of?
I think I'm in a really lucky place in that I've got a lot of people that are preparing me very well. I'm not sure how other people feel about that, to be honest with you, because a lot of the people I play with, they have careers. Like, there's lots of different types of careers within the team. There's an accountant, there's a vet, there's people, there's doctors, there's people that are lecturers at uni, there's all these different things. So I think some people, I'd say yes, and other people, I think they maybe don't realise that they're not actually that prepared. But an eye-opener for me was last year when I got injured, had a lot of time to like reflect and just be like, wow, this is what it's going to feel like. Obviously not injured, but like not being able to play and stuff. What are you going to do with your time? And then that's kind of when I looked into like the ambulance technician and stuff like that. I just kind of looked into it to see how you get into it and stuff. And it sounds really exciting, to be honest with you. Like, it's something that would definitely fill my time and stuff. So I think actually being injured gave me a chance to like reflect on life outside of rugby a bit more. But then obviously I'm back in the thick of it now, so it's kind of went to the back of my mind, not gonna lie.
So for those who are interested in following you a bit more closely and kind of seeing inside the life of Lana Skeldon, what does a day in the life outside of a worldwide pandemic normally look like?
Well, I see that's a difficult question, Rob, because if you were asking me that if I was down here, I'd be with the boys all the time. But to be honest, moving forward, I can see myself being in Edinburgh. So typically training Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. At the moment anyway. But then obviously when we go back to normal, it's probably going to be like a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, play either a Saturday or a Sunday, depending on where I end up playing. If I'm in the Scottish League or if I'm in the English League. If I'm in the English League, it's a Saturday, obviously. If I'm in the Scottish League, it's a Sunday. But typically training like sort of 3 to 4 days a week, usually double sessions. And the minute they're at night, they used to be in the morning. So that's a bit of a culture shock, but it's fine. Yeah, that's pretty much it, to be honest with you. And then I try and fit my studying in around that. I'm not the best at studying, I'm not going to lie. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I'll just leave that till next week. And then suddenly I've got 4 weeks worth of work to do. And I'm like, this is going to be difficult. But yeah, I do try and fit it in. Usually a Wednesday, usually my day off. I usually try and do all my like house jobs and uni stuff on that day. But yeah, also just trying to fit in a little bit of like family time, friends time. You know, it's really important to get away from it. It's difficult when all day people are involved in rugby, but no, it's good. I think a good life balance is making sure on the weekends that you've got off, not that there's many, but if there is, going away and doing something that's not rugby related. A couple of weeks ago I went and picked a pumpkin and went to the seaside and had fish and chips. It was great.
That what you're looking forward to for your week off coming up, something similar?
Well, probably. I mean, it's likely to be an ice cream at the beach or something, isn't it? Even though it's winter, it's still
I was
great.
going to say in November, are you sure?
Well, maybe, I don't know. I'm not sure. It's because everything's shut at the minute. You can't really do anything.
Yeah, true. So where can people keep up to date with you in terms of social media? Where can people find you if they want to learn a bit more about you and see what you get up to day to day?
I'm on Instagram. I think my username is @Skelper6. Or if you type in Lana Skeldon, I'm sure I'll come up. There's not that many of me going about. I'm also on Facebook. Not that I use it that often. I've started using Twitter a lot more, so if people want to follow me on that, it's @SkeldonLana. Yeah, that's pretty much it, to be honest with you.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much for your time today, Lana. It's been awesome chatting and great to catch up, and good luck with the next game against Wales and the World Cup qualification at the end of the year.
Thanks very much, Rob. Nice to speak to you.